not now. It's all set up and then my limb, they distracted me. All right. So I'd like to read from 2 Corinthians 4:16. And it says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal body that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Do you believe that? I didn't get a yay or nay, did you? So yesterday was 9/11, the celebration, recognition of the anniversary is 9/11. I was asked by a couple of people yesterday as they were driving through town, why are all the fire trucks out with flags on them? I'm going, yeah, it's been just long enough. Some of us have forgotten. And yet some of us have not. As bad as that day was, we are still, some of us, living it today. But for me, the bigger question is, what about today? Yes, we recognize that our country became less secure back then. And I don't know that we've felt that same security come back yet. I think we still have huge questions in our mind. I want to recognize, yes, the people that lost their lives in the towers, the workers. Also, I want to especially recognize the first responders in those same situations. I did a little research because I was wondering after how the first responders survived. Of the thousands, literally, a couple thousand, 900 have passed away. Cancer-related, typically, scenarios. Lung, brain, kidney, liver, and especially thyroid. Especially thyroid. I want us to think of these first responders as they fearlessly drove themselves into literally a dangerous situation without a thought of their own personal welfare. So as we look at it today, September 12th, what did we remember? What do we remember on that day? How many? All of you, except you. Stephanie's not going to remember this, but the rest of us will. When John F. Kennedy was killed.
Yeah, that's a no.
Yeah, Stephanie is not going to remember that. Do you? Yeah. You were just little. Yeah. 4. Mm-hmm. But you probably remember the emotion of the day. Maybe. I remember being in the first grade in Pendleton, standing in line, getting ready to go to lunch. I remember that. I remember standing in the middle of the line because my name starts with an H. So literally, alphabetically, I was square in the middle. And when they announced it over the intercom, I happened to be looking at the teacher for some reason, and instantly, tears started coming from her eyes. Instantly. I did not get the weight of the incident until that very moment. When I saw the emotional state of that person trying to hold themselves together and take care of a first grade class, getting ready to go to lunch, standing in line. We were being pretty noisy, and as soon as we saw her cry, we were instantly quiet. There wasn't a sound. And I recognize right now at this point, I have always been a people-watching person. Half of the class instantly started crying, and they did not have a reason why. Did not know why they were crying. I remember the next day, standing in that same line, getting ready to go to lunch. Okay, the next time I stood there, getting ready to go to lunch, it was still quiet. It surprised me how quiet it was. As I'm still watching some of these same students, the same teacher, they were not over what had just happened. I remember going to work after 9/11 and seeing the faces of the people I worked with and the customers that we related with. The day after, they were still very quiet, very subdued, confused, even hurt. Why were they hurt? Because of the faces that we saw. Do you remember seeing it come to fruition on the TV? Do you remember watching the news? I watched it one time, and that's all I could handle watching it. I gave up on it after that. Vicki was fixated with it. She could not get away with it, from it. And what did I see mostly? Yes, we saw the planes go into the towers. Yes, we saw the smoke and the dust and the fragmentation of the buildings. We saw them fall. And still we saw people on the outskirts, ants, literally running to this place. On September 12th, I actually sat down and said, God, what is my role in this? I did not receive an answer that day. It took many days for me to understand. And when I had a guy come to me later, weeks later, he said to me, what are you doing about 9/11? And as this young man just said, I was on pause. I was doing nothing. I was still numb. Some of you are still numb right here, right now, today. What are we doing about it? Did our churches miss a huge opportunity to witness to people at that time? That's where the guy was coming from. He said, what are you doing as an elder in your church? I was doing nothing. I was not responding. I made a conscious effort to not respond. Why? As I looked around me, I could see the hurt and the pain and the huge struggle of the people going on around us after. At that point, they needed help. They needed clarification, and not a one of us, even today, have good clarification, clarity on why that happened that day. Now we see what our leaders did. The first thing they chose to do after everything kind of fell out was to do what? Go after the people that had done it. In other words, revenge. Hold them accountable. Quite frankly, a lot of times when things things happen to us, that's what we are after. Accountability. Most of us do not know how to gain accountability for somebody else's actions. This young man, in his own way, held me accountable for the day. Stop talking, I want to talk. So he gave me a whole new insight of where I can go at that moment. The next time he is here, I have found a new energy, a new button to push, a new way to help him grow, to help him be quiet for 2 seconds. That's all he's got. 2 seconds at a time. And that's all it takes. Are we ready to take our own account into accountability with God and find out how we are dealing with 9/11's multiple disasters today? Are we ready to be first responders? How do we respond? If we have somebody come to us with some kind of family disaster or personal disaster, sick, whatever it is, how do we respond to that? Are we ready to? Are we willing? Or are we afraid? Are we still on pause? Those of you that are sitting here in this church today, in this building, are being called on to be something besides a pew warmer. We are called to action. We have multiple situations go on every single week that we are being called to respond to. As simply and hard as prayer. Most of the time we do not know what to pray for. So how do we learn what to pray for? Scripture says, do not look at things that you can see and think that they will be the end. Don't put your faith into things that you can see. Put your faith into things that are unseen. What are some of those? The things we see typically are people, money, security, earthly security, family, friends, possessions. None of these things truly bring us security. They can all be taken in an instant. A prime example. When the electricity goes off, how many of us walk over when we get up off the couch or go do something, and the first thing we do is we go over and flip the switch on? Each one of us has done that. I know we have. And then we go, oh yeah, electricity's off. If you live in the country and have a well, what is the worst thing you can do? Try to turn the water on. Or flush the toilet. Yes. In our house in Wallowa, we had 2 pressure tanks. 2 big tanks. The house we currently live in has a pressure tank about that big. Needless to say, after the first flush, there is no more water. We have not learned yet to deal with a small pressure tank. Probably what I'll do is put in a big pressure tank, because I'm too old to learn to deal with a small pressure tank. Was that an emergency? No. But I'm pretty secure knowing I have water most any time I want water, except when I don't. Then I have to rely on something unseen. If this building went away today, would this church survive tomorrow? If for some unforeseen reason this building burned down, or whatever, we had some kind of disaster, say an earthquake, or a tremendous wind, a tornado, could happen here in Oregon even. survive. Why? What is seen and unseen that you have the faith to know that this congregation would survive? If you look at each other and square in the eye, you know that you will gather together somewhere else. If nothing else, in the parking lot, because you've done it. We saw this last year when the pandemic hit, that we literally shut the building down. And yet, we still met outside. So we have proof. If this building goes away, this congregation will survive. How do we know this? Because we've proved it. That is something that is unseen. We see the building. We cannot put our faith or anything absolute into the building. What is unseen is the faith that each one of you has in your God, our God, that will carry us through without something seen. So, do you have the ability to be a first responder? Interesting, when I asked a young man, who took care of him when he was sick? His mom. And if I ask him again next time, who will take care of you when you're sick later? His same answer will be, my mom. He knows without knowing, no matter what, his mom will be there to take care of him. How many people in our community believe that we as a congregation are here to serve them and will be here to take care of them if they come to some kind of a disaster? How many people around us see us as the first responders? That's a hard question, because it pulls us into accountability. I believe I could call any one of you with any kind of a request, and you would do your best to figure out some way to fulfill it. It might be making a phone call to somebody else and say, hey, Archie's got a problem with this. Do you know anything about that? Can you help? I know each one of you would try your best to do that, and we are here for each other. But how many people out of this church depend on us to do that same thing for them? How much bigger would this congregation be if they literally had faith in knowing we would be there for them? If they had that faith. Our churches today are this empty because they do not have faith in us. Because all they see is the physical person. They do not see the unseen, the spiritual person. We hide the Spirit within us. It's time to bring him out. How do we do that? Scripture, prayer, fellowship, and faith. Father, train me in the ways that you wish for me to go. Show me the light. Show me the people that you've placed in my hand that nobody can take out, that I can serve for you, that you might be blessed and they in turn will be blessed. Recognition. Recognizing those. Some of those are people we might not like very well. Some of those are maybe people that we really don't want much to do with. And yet some of those same people are ones we love to pieces and we can only take so much of. I just had somebody tell me this morning, after today, people are leaving. I feel a little bit guilty about it, but not a whole lot. Who's in our life that is taking up space? Or who are we taking space from? One of my favorite advertisements lately, and this is an older advertisement, it's a Claritin advertisement. And you see this guy in a bubble. And what an animation they've got going on there. As the guy's she takes a pencil and she pops the bubble. And she gives him a medication. How many of us are walking around in a bubble and things are just muffled and we're breathing with difficulty, living life with difficulty? Not this literal breath, but the breath of the Spirit within us. Allow God to burst your bubble, to allow people to enter your space. We all have walls up. We all have our personal space. Sometimes we have to let people in. And that's difficult sometimes. So I guess my request is this. Learn how to be a first responder. Who's our best example of that? Jesus. He touched every single person and allowed them to touch him, no matter what their infirmity was, as he got to know them. Can we do the same thing? All right, at this time,